Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News Weekend. As residents of Yellowknife continued to evacuate on Friday, federal ministers announced priorities for those fleeing their homes due to wildfires. Here's Annette Francis with some of the details from the press conference.
The minister responsible for emergency preparedness took the lead in the update to the media.
The Canadian Armed Forces are providing personnel and resources to assist with Type 3 firefighting, airlift resources for the movement of people and equipment, and support with evacuation planning and coordination. The federal government is also delivering funding to eligible First Nations through the Indigenous Services Canada's Emergency Management Assistance Program. The Canadian Coast Guard is providing personnel and equipment to assist with firefighting.
Thousands continue to evacuate from Yellowknife as more than 200 wildfires rage across the region. There remains a possibility fires could reach Yellowknife's outskirts by the weekend. Bill Blair, the Minister of National Defence, said the top priority right now is to keep people safe.
That no one will be left behind. And so if for whatever reason a person is unable to evacuate either by road or by commercial flight, we'll make sure that we accommodate them and we provide them with the support that they need and help them get to a position of safety.
Terry Beach, Minister of Citizen Services, says anyone who has to apply for benefits due to the evacuation will be fast-tracked. He encouraged people to call Service Canada or access their website.
You will not need a record of employment. Please also consider signing up for direct deposit. If you're still receiving paper checks for employment insurance, your pension, OAS, this will ensure payments will be made directly into your bank account. We are also proactively reaching out to individuals who are still receiving paper checks, and we're also facilitating replacement payments for benefit checks that may have been left behind.
Blair took the time to praise the work of the Canadian Rangers.
I think the Rangers, I want to acknowledge, they do extraordinary work for us in the north. They're out there helping the people at evacuation centers, registering at the airport. They're also helping along that highway to make sure that there are support services, tow trucks, fuel depots. It's a long drive south from Yellowknife to those communities, and the Canadian Armed Forces are there. We're prepared to scale up if required.
Minister Sajjan also said that contingency planners continue to work on logistics on a daily basis because of the changing situation. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Dozens of National Union of Taxation employees showed up in force at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights in Winnipeg on Thursday. They were there to show solidarity with activists who are pushing for a search of a Winnipeg area landfill for the remains of 3 Indigenous women. APTN's Leanne Sanders was there and has more.
Union President Mark Briere called on other unions and Canadians to stand in solidarity with the Indigenous community in Winnipeg to support a search of the Prairie Green landfill for 3 Indigenous women, believed to be the victims of an alleged serial killer.
But this is more than a cause. This is an injustice, to no end.
Briere leads the 30,000-strong union representing Canada Revenue Agency workers. He brought dozens of rank-and-file members away from their national conference to stand alongside Indigenous activists.
This is absolutely appalling, in my opinion, that the government is disrespecting the Indigenous people, especially the Indigenous women. They are being, they're disappeared, they're murdered. Nobody cares. They talk about it, then it goes away in the news. I think that it's time to make a difference, time to support them. The families seem to be almost alone to fight to get justice.
With a provincial election on the horizon, Manitoba Premier Heather Stephenson says the province will not support a search, while her political opponent, NDP leader Wab Kinew, does. The sister of Mercedes Myron became emotional talking about the fight to get governments on board for a search.
Our favorite place to adventure to when we were kids was the Forks. And now, it sucks that I have to stand here today in the same place fighting to bring her home. In order to do that, we need support from all 3 levels of government. They need to stop playing hot potato and using us for their political gain.
It's too late to search the Prairie Green landfill this year, which means future marches, rallies, and other actions by the families and their supporters. Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Local media was abuzz after Quebec's Superior Court ruled it had jurisdiction to hear a case which calls on the removal of Governor General Mary Simon because she does not speak French. Simon, the first Indigenous Governor General, attended a federal day school in Quebec's Nunavik region. She promised to learn French when she was first appointed in 2021. Ottawa argued that only the federal court could hear the case, but Quebec Superior Court Justice Catherine Pichet ruled that Simon cannot be considered a federal officer because she was technically appointed by Queen Elizabeth II. The federal government did not appeal the judgment and told APTN by email that it could not comment because the case is before the courts. The challenge was filed last summer by a group of Quebecers who want Simon's appointment declared null and void.
Ça n'a rien à voir avec la personne qui occupe le poste de gouverneur général en tant que tel, mais bien la Constitution, mais bien la loi. On pense que le gouvernement fédéral a fait une erreur, qu'il a enfreint les dispositions linguistiques prévues à la Charte canadienne des droits et libertés. Et on pense important, non seulement pour le cas présent, mais surtout pour l'avenir, de régler cette question.
A familiar face in Indigenous politics in Saskatchewan has thrown his hat into the ring to be the next leader of the Assembly of First Nations. David Pratt is serving his second term as a vice chief with the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations. He's a member of the Musqueam First Nation in southern Saskatchewan. An election for national chief was made necessary after Roseanne Archibald was ousted from the position in June. That vote will be held in December. Pratt is the first candidate to announce his intentions to become national chief. He had this to say on Wednesday on why he is seeking the AFN's top job.
What we've witnessed the last few years at the AFN and a lot of the issues that we're facing and seeing the lack of movement on a number of our very important files, and my experience working here and building consensus within our region, as well as across the country and with other regions, compelled me, and I think that I could do a good job. And, I think I could be able to build that consensus and bring our chiefs together. And
finding ways to crack down on those falsely claiming Indigenous identity was the focus of a gathering in Calgary. We'll bring you that story and more after the break. Welcome back to APTN National News Weekend. There was a day-long conference held in Calgary this past Wednesday called Indigenous Identity and Pretendians. It happened at the Grey Eagle Casino and Resort, and its aim was to educate about the growing problem with people falsely claiming Indigenous identity. APTN's Chris Stewart was there.
Elena Dorr is the CEO of Indigenous Gatherings. She created this conference because she believes too many Indigenous people are losing out on job and scholastic opportunities to non-Indigenous people who falsely claim to be Indigenous.
I've had so many experiences. I was appointed to the Alberta First Nations Women's Council on Economic Security, and there was self-identification to become a member. And these positions are held for First Nations people who can speak, who can represent and make recommendations and policy for the people. And when we have someone there who is not Indigenous, who self-identifies, who's never grown up on a reserve or isn't part of the community, that could really change the way policy is made, and those benefits or those opportunities do not even reach the community.
Andre Baer is a Plains Cree advocate for inherent and treaty rights. He's working on his doctorate in law, and he spoke at the conference. Baer says he experienced firsthand how spots intended for Indigenous students go to others instead.
And it got worse in law school, where it became evident that non-Indigenous people were pretending to be Indigenous in order to get into law school, and then they began applying and winning scholarships for thousands and thousands of dollars, and unfortunately it was at the expense of visibly Indigenous peoples, especially people from the reserve that were not able to get those scholarships.
Jean Taye is a Métis lawyer who specializes in Indigenous rights law. She spoke on video conference about how self-identifying as Indigenous is not enough. She says schools, employers, and government must do more to combat the problem. Fiona Kirkpatrick-Parsons is the Senior National Advisor for Deloitte Indigenous. The company supports Indigenous businesses and communities. She says that it is looking at changing their hiring policies. She is here to become more informed.
I came here just to make sure, along with a colleague of mine, to make sure that we are getting as many perspectives as possible as we go forward, because it's a very nuanced and very complex issue. It's not something that's very, very simple to solve, but the fact is we have to do something, and we're taking that step to do just that.
Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Calgary.
Atikamekw is the only language to gain more speakers in Quebec among First Nations between 2016 and 2021. That's according to new data. 2 years ago, the Atikamekw Nation released an Atikamekw French dictionary to promote the language. Now the community has created a new thematic dictionary that focuses on the culture. Here's Maricela Amador with more.
If you travel into any of the 3 Atikamekw communities in Quebec, you will hear the language spoken everywhere. By leaders, by elders, and by the youth. And the numbers don't lie. Recent data from Statistics Canada shows that not only is Atikamekw one of the strongest languages in Quebec, but also one of the fastest growing. And now the nation continues its conservation efforts with the launch of a thematic Atikamekw French dictionary.
Le but premier, c'était pour nos jeunes, justement les outiller pour qu'ils puissent avoir un outil de référence là, en ce qui concerne la langue Atikamekw.
Nicole Petitquet is a language coordinator at the Council for the Atikamekw Nation. She says the new dictionary contains more than 220 themes and sub-themes focused on traditional knowledge.
C'est pour léguer là, la richesse là, de la langue Atikamekw. De plus que la langue Atikamekw est l'une des langues les plus parlées là, au Canada. Encore, mais il reste qu'il est encore très fragile, là, comme toutes les langues.
This is the second dictionary produced by the nation. They released an Atikamekw French dictionary in 2021. Both projects were done in collaboration with Dr. Marie-Odile Juncker, a linguistics professor from Carleton University.
In the time of climate change, I think humanity is really looking for a new way to envision their place in the world, in nature, as a species. And languages like Atikamekw have some interesting pointers, indication of how to do that.
Juncker says the Atikamekw Council first reached out to her in 2013 with the idea of enshrining the language through a dictionary.
There is a lot of richness and mandatory richness indicated in the lexicon about, I would say, the place of human in nature, not outside.
The 2021 volume contains over 13,000 words and is a hit with both students and teachers from the communities of Manawan, Upitziwan, and Wamotasi, where Petitquet is from.
Puis quand on fait la tournée des communautés, faire la promotion pour la langue, on voit là, dans leurs yeux là, qu'ils ont comme ils ont le goût d'apprendre. Je connais une des enseignantes moi, qui m'a dit, moi je travaille beaucoup avec ça. Toutes les questions que je me posais moi, à moi-même là, sont toutes là.
Creating this important reference material required collaboration with elders, a situation complicated by the pandemic. Now that they're published, Petitquet says that the dictionaries give the communities a sense of belonging.
Notre langue là, est très précieuse puis est très riche. Il faut faire de quoi là, pour vraiment là, le transmettre à nos jeunes. Étant donné aussi que nos jeunes parlent encore la langue, nos tout petits aussi. Enfin, on a quelque chose, là, on a des outils là, de référence qu'on peut les prendre dans les mains.
Maricela Amador, APTN National News, Montreal.
An International Association of Indigenous Journalists has handed out some awards and changed its name. That and more still to come. Welcome back to APTN National News Weekend. Where are all the women? Might be a question you ask yourself when looking at the art on museum and gallery walls. But a new exhibit at the Manitoba Indigenous Cultural Education Centre in Winnipeg hopes to answer that question by focusing solely on Indigenous female artists. The Where Are All the Women exhibit explores the art made by Indigenous women over the course of the centre's almost 50-year history. Features artistic mediums from jingle dresses to birch bark biting and explains the importance each artist holds in her craft through artist biographies. The exhibit will run throughout the month. Exhibit curator Danielle Mason says it's a great way to learn about female creators who we might not hear of otherwise in the mainstream.
Growing up, the only people I saw on the walls were like Van Gogh and Picasso and just these like very status quo male artists that didn't really have a lot of diversity or representation for me personally. And a lot of the artists that we have featured in this exhibit kind of share that sentiment where they didn't see anybody who looked like them on the walls, or see any names that they could kind of relate to. So we wanted to kind of focus on representing not only like women, but like the minorities especially.
A 13-year-old graphic design artist from Norway House Cree Nation in Manitoba has designed a new hoodie for her mom's apparel line that was inspired by the Barbie doll. Alexis Mowat-Keeper designed this Indigenous Barbie image. It'll be used for some new merchandise that her mother, Janine Mowat, and her business partner, Shina Gray of Enclave Apparel, will be selling online. Enclave Apparel now sells custom designs and Indigenous-inspired designs online on their Facebook page. Mowat and Gray will be opening a shop in Winnipeg next month. When the store opens, they will also sell freehand artwork done by Alexis.
Well, because it's trending right now, me and Shayna were talking about incorporating a Barbie-inspired sweater into our new clothing line, and we decided that we would get Alexis to draw it up for us. She's really good with her digital apps and her drawing apps.
Quite the talent, Alexis has. Well, representatives of Vancouver's International Airport and the Musqueam First Nation joined together to unveil a very special place at the YVR Airport. The Musqueam Gathering Place will welcome travelers from around the world, where they'll have the opportunity to immerse themselves in the culture and rich heritage of the Musqueam people. The centerpiece for the space is a stunning handcrafted 30-foot ocean-going canoe. It was carved from a 600-year-old red cedar log. The canoe is a collaboration between master carvers from 10 different communities, along with 126 airport staff who each got an opportunity to carve a little bit of the canoe. The project's part of a friendship agreement between the Musqueam and the airport signed in 2017 to achieve a mutually beneficial relationship between the airport and the Musqueam community.
Recognizing that we are on the traditional, unceded and continuously occupied territory of Musqueam, making sure that our symbols, our welcome posts, the way that we welcome newcomers to our region and indeed our country is done in a good way, celebrating Musqueam and Musqueam traditions. This space here that you see behind me is yet another way that we can show the commitment that we have to Musqueam and advance the learnings that are so important.
Our ancestors are here with us today. It was their goal and vision for us to be part of our land, our community, and knowing that the lands were taken away from us, but how we, in our declaration, it talks about how we work together. When we talk about reconciliation and we talk about building relationships, how we can move forward, I think that this is the Cadillac version. For the federal government, provincial government, and municipalities, and the general public to learn how we can work together and how we can accomplish goals.
Hundreds of Indigenous journalists from across North America converged on Winnipeg last week. They met for the annual Native Media Industry Conference, which included an awards gala Saturday night, where APTN brought home some hardware. The conference also saw a name change for the media organization that will encourage inclusivity going forward. Leanne Sanders has more.
The evolution of the organization representing Indigenous journalists has entered a new phase. Known as the Native American Press Association when it formed in the United States in 1983, a majority of members voted on Friday to change the name from the Native American Journalists Association to the Indigenous Journalists Association. The new name is intended to be more inclusive of Indigenous journalists across the globe. APTN News was recognized with a number of awards, including the Elias Boudinot Free Press Award. Former APTN Executive Director of News and Current Affairs, Karen Pugliese, spoke about the network's role in exposing wrongful convictions of Indigenous people and APTN's successful bid to have the judge deny a publication ban in the case of the Kiwazant sisters' wrongful convictions in Saskatchewan.
Justice Donnelly agreed and denied the publication ban, saying that APTN News was the genesis of the story that led to the nationwide coverage. APTN was also the 2019 recipient of this same award for their response to the Indigenous-led occupation of Muskrat Falls.
APTN's Executive Director of News and Current Affairs, Cheryl McKenzie, acknowledged the work of her whole team as she accepted the award.
It just really makes me proud to work with everybody every day, and like I said before, I find my strength in their work. Absolutely. And Jim Compton, absolutely, who has helped us launch our network and our newsroom and brought it into being. And just like to thank you very much to my colleagues with APTN News. Yes.
During an earlier APTN panel discussion, McKenzie spoke of APTN's commitment to incubating new Indigenous journalistic talent.
APTN really is a place where people can come get experience, and the experience that people get at APTN, if they show real promise, they get big opportunities. Like you can be an intern showing promise, and a month later you're hosting our national news program. So we just really want to train Indigenous journalists and bring them up, because there aren't nearly enough.
Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Now that was a fun conference and informative. Well, that's all the time we have for you this weekend for APTN National News. For the very latest, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy, thanks for being with us. Have a safe weekend.